recording pending. It feels like pandemic time. Oh, no, we're going. Okay, so welcome everyone to the September 2021 Microsoft 365 Modern Management Meetup. My name is Mike O'Shea and I'm joined by Stephen Hosking and Ben Reeder. So I'll just get you to wave or do the quick intro. Now, just the I guess the normal policy or procedures that we go through is just if there's anyone new who's joining or anyone who hasn't joined for a while that just wants to do either a quick introduction, whether you want to do it via chat, whether you want to do it via voice or video, like we don't really care as long as we've got a little bit of an idea of who's here and maybe why they're here. So just if you want to jump in and just because I think there are a few of you who we haven't seen for a while or maybe joining for the first time. So if anyone wants to do a quick intro, let me know. It looks like George and I are in the same office.
Yeah. My name is George Farrell. I'm a business development manager at Ingram Micro for the Microsoft Modern Workplace.
Oh, okay. So when you do go to work, you're over at Rosebery.
When we go to work, we're
So Rosebery is within my 5-kilometer radius.
Oh, wow.
But that doesn't mean I'd be able to find parking anywhere near you.
Well, you probably could right now.
Yeah, true.
So glad to be here. Thanks, fellas.
Anyone else who's new?
I mean, Peter's clearly going to introduce himself.
Indeed. Just to put him on the spot.
Yeah, why not?
And I think Robert hasn't been here in a while, so you may want to introduce himself too.
No, okay.
Oh, I think Peter's typing. And Robert's typing.
It's a race.
Come on,
this is going to be thrilling for the video replay.
Oh, my mind, man. Very good, Rob.
Nice.
Your mic cannot unmute. Have I done anything weird to settings? Let me just have a quick look.
I think it's on his side.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it looks good over here.
Yeah. All good.
Okay, so let's jump in then and just sort of we'll go through just a few I guess updates before we jump into the topic where Ben and Steve will take over. So we've actually got the rest of the year's meetings sort of planned out, etc. So let's just talk about them quickly. So October, like we've got the Windows 11 launch, so no doubt there'll be plenty of things that we can cover there. Hopefully we've got a solid hardware compatibility story that hasn't changed in the lead up to it. But like, yeah, I think, yeah, we covered it in the Win 11 session that we had a couple of months back, or was it last month? Or 2 months ago now, where
2 months ago.
Yeah, you sort of look at what's, the things that are basically being hard or soft locked. They're mostly things that would sort of either be already close to the end of life in a lot of organizations with a decent life cycle policy, or maybe they're things that have already been extended way over that. And so I think there'll probably be a few more things that we'll sort of see as this gets closer. But I guess probably the big things here we'll be talking about, like things that you need to do in terms of prepping, pre-preparing your environment to make sure that when you do start moving across that that you've got the right elements in place to make it as painless as possible. Now, as we move into November, this is where we'll do Sentinel, but not just it's not going to be a general purpose Sentinel session. It's going to be.
I'll make it simple. Mark,
yeah.
I'll make it simple. It's not we. Mark will be doing a Sentinel and Defender.
Okay.
Session.
Yeah. So the Sentinel session will really be Sentinel with an eye towards what are the signals we can start pulling in from mostly from M365 Defender. So we're not going to try to roll in a whole bunch of different things. Maybe we'll put in like a bit of Wing server stuff in there as well, because that's easy enough. But we'll keep it fairly focused on things that pretty much anyone who joins us on these regularly, probably the things that are going to make the most sense rather than trying to get a bit too exotic in terms of, connecting to, let's call it exotic workloads. And I'm using the term exotic quite loosely. And then December will really just be an Endpoint Manager year in review, where we'll sort of be covering off, I guess, what were the biggest changes that we saw in Endpoint Manager / Intune, and I guess, other things that obviously wrap around that. So again, not trying to cover everything, probably more importantly, the changes that we've liked, that we've seen, that have made our jobs easier in some way, rather than, maybe things that I'll use the word exotic, rather than, things that fall into the more exotic management capabilities. So with that, it's kind of unusual for us to have something planned out like that. But seeing that I was creating team meetings and links and things, I thought, why not just do all three? And that way we can either nominate people or be nominated to deliver them, as just happened. So just quickly here, I just want to cover off the Defender for Endpoint P1 preview announcement that was made at the end of August. So just to sort of show this here, it's a subset of what was Defender for Endpoint. So what was Defender for Endpoint is now Defender for Endpoint P2, and now we've got Defender for Endpoint P1. So it's the attack surface reduction pieces, next-gen protection, and the investigation pieces. So what you can see here is, in terms of what's not there, things like the detection and response, the automated investigation, and the threat experts. I think, when you sort of think about some of the reasons why these things may not be part of it, my take on this, and if anyone knows differently and wants to correct me, please do so. But my take on, especially over on this side, that some of these are things that are still quite human intensive, in terms of, like, even you think about threat experts, for example, like that's something where people have to look at the thing you want, or with AIR, people have to sort of go through and figure out how to look at these things to make sure that if machine learning isn't running amok, for example. So other things around attack surface reduction and next-gen protection, this is something that, I wouldn't say that it could scale infinitely, but this is something that you could scale that up in terms of sheer volume of users without too much trouble. But as soon as you start having things where there is more of that human element, obviously trying to scale, Microsoft trying to scale out their SOC is not something that they can do too quickly, because just trying to find people with the right skills is going to be problematic at the best of times. So this just gives a bit more of a breakdown, and I've pulled most of what we've covered here. I've pulled from a blog post that I'll drop a link into chat so you can take a look at it. But this just breaks it down a little bit further, so you can start seeing that it's those things that we saw over on the other side start to sort of break out here, that they're not actually included with the P1. So there's a few questions that I was sort of thinking of when I was looking at the announcement, and thankfully some of those answers are already available. But this is probably one of the more important. Don't worry about this stuff overall. Don't worry about what's in here. Otherwise, those of you, if you look too closely at this per user box, you are going to start complaining about things you're seeing in here. So let's just focus on things that are above it. So the two ways to get it. So two ways. Defender for Endpoint Plan 1, you can buy it as an add-on. So, Win 10 Pro upwards, etc. kind of conversation. And then it's also going to be included with M365 E3. So as far as I'm aware, this is the first, I guess, like from the good old ATP/Defender family, it's the first of those services to actually become part of M365 E5, or just E5 E3 SKUs in general. Normally, so if you sort of go back a few years, anything with an ATP or now Endpoint or Defender would have only been part of an E5 or a P2, whereas now some of that stuff has started to sneak in here. So what that means is that some of the, those of you who sort of have to keep updated versions of charts like Aaron Dinage makes around what's included with each product. This, it's not that this throws a spanner in the works. It just means that, this is one of those things that comes through. So just the important pieces is that it's, the entitlement is pretty much the same as Defender ATP up to, Defender for Endpoint V2. That was not deliberate. So up to 5 users, available later in 2021, no pricing information just yet, and E3 and A3 users get it. Now, if anyone does deal with education, it's not included with the student benefits program. So it's for the institution. It's not for end users' personal devices where they would be able to use Win 10 education, for example. So I think there's some of the, you can kind of see, without necessarily thinking about it, this is starting to address some of the questions that are going to come up. So the following slide, I created this from scratch, and you'll probably be able to tell as we work through it. So is this going to be included with Windows 10 Enterprise E3? Who wants to have a guess? No, see previous slide. Is this going to be included with Microsoft 365 Business Premium?
Yes.
No.
See previous slide.
Is this going to be included with EMS E3, E5?
Oh, no.
Maybe.
No. Is this available for Windows Server or Linux?
Yes.
No. This is only applicable to client operating systems. Now, I created that answer in order to annoy anyone who wants to sort of go, but I use Linux as a client operating system. No, we know Linux is going to be mostly used as a server, but this is a client-focused solution. If somebody wants Defender for Endpoint for server, that is basically similar to the P2 SKU that you can buy. You can buy through your CSP program. So I think this one probably the biggest, not surprise, but the one that I was probably hoping the answer would be a little bit different was the Business Premium one, because if we sort of jump back across to that previous slide, in this case, notice that it's not being added to any of the major suites that are part of M365 E3. It's not part of the Win 10 component. It's not part of the O365 component. It's not part of the EMS component. It's actually a benefit for people who've got M365 E3. So it's not particularly complicated in terms of what's included or what's not included when you sort of start thinking about the logic, etc., behind it. But this is, I guess, for me anyway, I think this M365 Business Premium one is probably the one that I think a lot of SMB focused partners are probably going to be a bit disappointed by that one. And in reality, this is something that the M365 business team wanted something like this going back quite a few years. And the logic that they were using at the time, something a bit lighter weight than, at the time it was still Windows Defender ATP. Their view was that even if they could convince those their Defender team to include it in Business Premium, the issue would have been that most of that segment wouldn't have really known what to do with all of the additional capabilities that you would be getting over, whatever current solution they'd be using. So this kind of fixes that issue, but it just doesn't make it part of Business Premium. So pretty straightforward. I guess once we see what the price of it is, if it's only like $1 or $1.50 cheaper than full Defender, P2, it's probably a tougher sell. But if it's significantly cheaper, you could sort of see where it definitely would make sense in some cases. So based on the limited amount of information that is currently available around this, is there anything, any questions that people or things that you've thought of around this in terms of even if you're hearing about it for the first time, anything that that you'd sort of expect to get a bit more information of? Now they've already documented this stuff over on Docs. I'll bring up the support or the blog post where they announce that, and that links out to the different Docs articles. So at least you can sort of dig into a bit more detail. Just be careful though, as you go through some of the links that are in here. Some of the links might just take you out to a Defender for Endpoint article as opposed to a Defender for Endpoint P1 article. So just be careful that you don't end up getting excited by things that aren't actually included in here. So who's ready to start putting a P1 or P2 at the end of any reference to Defender for Endpoint? I'm struggling.
Everybody's got E5, right?
For like
Well,
6 months until
yeah.
the name changes.
Yeah, I think it's like, like I'll still call it Defender ATP. That way I'm covering myself. I'm not getting the P1 or P2 part incorrect. I'm getting the whole thing incorrect. So I can see, I think, Eddie and Peter. So Defender ATP P1.
Just add with Bing at the end.
Yeah. .NET as well.
Let's not drag .NET into this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
somebody's a sensitive developer now.
Yeah, I like .NET.
Yeah. Okay, so that's pretty much just for the intro stuff. So obviously, if there's anything major here that impacts, what you could bring into Sentinel, etc., but I don't really think I don't really think this is going to impact it. They haven't, they basically, even if we just go back, actually, I won't unbuild that entire slide. If we just switch back to that article and take a look, because that's where I pulled this, the screenshots or whatever from. But if we go to that one where they sort of start listing things out, like one of the things that I was looking for is, okay, what if we want like a seam connector? So even though it's technically not saying Sentinel, it's Sentinel. So the fact that that is there is still a good thing. But you can sort of see here that, it's, once you get into the articles, if you're not familiar with everything they're covering here, all that stuff is pretty well covered in the Defender docs. And I guess that's also stuff that we can have a much deeper jump into in the November session.
Cool.
So with that, I can now hand over to either Ben or Steve.
Me? Do we want to let's flip this around? Mark, why did you want us to do the things we're about to do? Because this is a conversation that we haven't actually had yet, so we may as well do it live.
So I guess the reality here is we've kind of moved beyond PowerShell being the only scripting or programmatic, or I guess way to go through and start automating some of these tasks. So all of a sudden, once you start looking at what's been added to Graph API, to Graph over the last 6 months, year, etc., it's much more. It's something that I think just has to be in the IT toolbox. You can't go, oh, that's Graph APIs for developers or whatever. It's like, no, there's a ton of useful stuff you can do with it just by cutting and pasting, renaming a few things, for example, and ready to go. And I found that the Graph documentation for quite a few things has been pretty damn easy just to use things as they are, as opposed to trying to sort of figure out how do I apply it. So I thought it would be good, like, to sort of look at some of the different tools rather than, if you're not a developer and you're not using things like, VS Code or, anything else that's going to be sort of catching things and making recommendations, just to sort of get an idea of some of the types of things you can do, but also the tools that are going to make it easier for you to actually get things done. So maybe, going, okay, this is a good reason for me to use this thing that I know I probably should know a bit more about. So does that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense. All right, well, I'll go first so that Steve can finish. But this is very much a collaborative scenario. So if anyone's got any questions, feel free to come off mute if you can find your mute button. And if anyone's got any questions, wants to interject and tell me I'm doing things wrong,
Which you are.
Always. But I don't know unless people tell me. So I'm going to share my screen. So the scenario that we're doing here is, so Mark wanted to go through a scenario of how do we publish AppX files. I think potentially he was talking more around how do we publish AppX files to the store. but who knows what's happening with the store at the moment, so we won't get into that. So what I want to do is sort of show you the process for like the first thing that everyone would probably want to do is just deploy it as a line of business app. I've done this a couple of times, but we're just going to do it again because my demo didn't work. So I'm going to show you this thing, and then I'm going to show you how I would actually do it. Let's have a look here. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to deploy, we're going to pretend like the Windows terminal doesn't exist in the store for business right now. I don't know how to. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So let's pretend like the Windows terminal doesn't exist in the company portal or the store. Why can I see? That's true. Good one, Mark. Oh dear. Okay. Again,
Yeah, I told you I had a thing for you.
Yeah, it was very good. Why did I have my webcam? Anyway, so let's pretend the store, the Windows terminal doesn't exist as a thing that we can simply just port over from the store for business, and it just works. Updating is magically handled and all that sort of fun stuff. Let's pretend we just need to be able to find the MSIX bundles, and we need to be able to publish this to the company portal for our end users to consume. So the first thing we'd obviously do is we'd find Windows Terminal GitHub. We go to the repository. We go into releases.
Zoom.
Don't tell me to zoom. And we can see here we've got the MSIX bundles. So this is literally the installation media for this latest version of the application. So I've already got it downloaded, I think. Yeah, here it is. Windows Terminal.
I'm sure it is.
Sure, it sounds good. An unpacked MSIX bundle is just a whole bunch of different MSIX files based on your architecture. So, you know, the actual package itself is pretty ingenious. Installation of an MSIX bundle is literally double click on the thing. It's going to tell me it's already installed, but literally it's just install. Couple of key things. Generally, these install to the user context. There is no admin privileges required to install these things. These are non-destructive applications that don't actually require any sort of deep level of system implementation or integration. So they're actually a really good way to deploy software. Just unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be the de facto standard. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that it does eventually, because it makes things very easy, and everyone's going to shake their head, and I know, but whatever. Let's get past it. This is the dream. This is the end state. This makes this easy. So now we've got our media. So how do we get it into Intune? So the standardized way to do it, and I'm actually gonna. Should I open up DevTools to show what this looks like as well? Yeah. Okay.
Side by side.
Yeah, I'll do that. So for those that don't know, I just pressed F12. I press some buttons on my keyboard and it opens up. And I'm going over to network. I've got a filter that's set to graph.microsoft.com so that I only see calls that go to graph. And this is how I learn how this stuff works, literally by going in and just doing the thing. So I've gone into my Intune portal or my endpoint portal or MEMAC or whatever we want to call it. Going into the applications, I'm going to Windows, and I'm just going to add. And if I didn't know any better, I would go into line of business because it sounds like a thing. It's a line of business application. And hey, look, MSI, Apex bundle, MSIX. That's what I want. Okay, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to hit select. Very simple. It's going to ask for the package. We can see over here that we've got quite a lot of noise happening, so that's cool. That means that's working. I'm going to upload this. No, that was a folder. That's the one I want. Boom. So it pulls in a lot of metadata from the file already. So we've got the name, the platform, the size, whether it's MAM enabled or not. And then we get that metadata coming through. We've got the publisher information that it actually grabs from an XML that's from within the file.
It's got a whole bunch signing name. So that's
it's basically the signing
business name.
That's correct. That is it. All right, so we've got a bunch of stuff here. We can start filling in the information, privacy, developer, owner, you know, to customize that sort of stuff. If you're going to make this application available as as an available application in your company portal, the most important thing that I would recommend is to set a logo. Otherwise, your environment looks terrible and no one will use it. But we're not going to do that because I don't care about my end users. So I'm going to hit next. So on this screen here, we can obviously set our assignments. We can do required, available, and uninstall. At this point, I just want to get it up in my environment. I don't particularly care about how we're going to assign.
Let's pause there for a second, though, Ben.
Oh, yeah, we can talk about that. So, okay.
Of course, we're going to talk about that. So we're going to call out.
Yeah, this is the reason why we don't use line of business anymore and why a cattail is walking past Mark's face. With assignments, this was the first iteration of how do we get software that is non-standard to client environments, and it was basically just, yeah, we're going to push it to a security group and that's it. So let's go ahead and we'll make it available.
So that wasn't the part that I was wanting to talk to you about, but we'll go through the part first.
Yeah, sure. So if anyone's used to deploying Win32 applications, when you assign a group, you're probably used to seeing a lot more information than just this. That is because Win32 applications have more context. They have more control. So things like notification suppression, delivery optimization, setting availability and deadlines, things like that, that are essentially lifted and shifted.
Do you not have filters enabled on this tenant?
I do.
There we go. That's also missing there as well.
Correct. That is 100% correct. It is not available for line of business. Essentially, line of business applications and all its sort of functionality is not being maintained. And this is kind of by design. Win32 is better. So just this is the main reason to not do this sort of stuff. It is a lot easier to actually package this and deploy it out, but you do miss a lot of the functionality. And I'm like, if anyone's just dipping their toes into this and they're just doing line of business, I urge you to stop now, because you will only end up in pain and have to redo all of this in the future. What were you going to show, Steve?
I was just going to talk around the all users, all devices. So obviously you have the option there. Don't do that because it makes it hard for your pilots and deployments.
Yes.
Making it available, sure. Making it required for all users or all devices, or uninstall, you're going to get yourself into a bind when there's a new version of that application, because you will need to then go and unpick that and add in a group and then exclude and start off in the right place. Start off targeting groups. And
that's correct.
Don't do nested groups because it's really hard to triage and understand where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm. Even though
nested dynamic is worse.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just going to clear the dev tools because everything that we're looking at here is actually not necessary to what we're doing. So I'll just show you. Okay, so we've got an assignment that is as much control as we want, which is user contextual system. And that's kind of it. We've got the metadata and we've pointed the local thing. So we're going to hit next. We're going to review everything. We're happy with this. That's all good. And we'll hit create. So we can see here now it's doing a whole bunch of stuff. And these guys here, this is the actual upload of the software or of the media that we're actually pushing up. Now this is real slow. Because what this is doing is it's breaking the package up into multiple chunks of files and just synchronously uploading each little bit. It is not a fun experience. This is the same experience as you would get if you were uploading a Intune Win file through the Win32 solution. Luckily, there are better solutions like the one that I use when I was doing this that uses AZ copy to upload because we get multi-threading and all that sort of fun stuff. But we just need to understand that it doesn't really even matter how fast your internet connection is. This is a synchronous deployment. It's just a pain and it takes longer than it should. So again, this is still going and it's only a 28 meg file and I've got decent internet. But we can see it's, yeah, I do. So that's all going. That's happy days. That looks like it's completed. Yep, it's saying it there as well. So what we can do is we'll go into overview. And we can just dive in a little bit because I don't want to spend too long doing a deep dive into this, but I'll just sort of show you what some of this metadata looks like that we're actually uploading. So if I go into mobile apps, where is it?
Give it a little bit of a zoom.
This is as much zoom as I can give you, my friend.
Okay.
Um,
So it's the first, third and fourth one.
No, it is not. Third and fourth one. No, that's looking at the things, content versions, expand category. Oh man, did I lose it? No, here it is. This is what I wanted. And now I can zoom. Okay. So what we're looking at here is the metadata of the actual content that is being uploaded. So there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's been deleted because I'm useless at I'm enhancing. The important thing to understand is that everything that we do in the UI is simply filling out a JSON payload that then gets posted back to Graph. So that includes all of the metadata around the application, so the name of it, the description, the publisher, everything. The actual file itself is slightly more complicated, and this is why we can see all of these different things. We've got content versions. We're essentially creating a quasi storage account location that you are supposed to know about, that opens up and gives you a very, very short time frame SAS code that allows you to upload the media to that. Now, the line of business applications do the same thing as Win32 applications. They encrypt the file, turn it into a bin file, and then upload it. It's just the same experience. So, you know, basically, in a nutshell, it is the same experience programmatically. There's a little bit of difference. And the important thing here is the OData field, which if I can try and find it, is my auth code. It is this one right here, this OData type. This is what defines exactly the file that I am uploading here. And this is what I spent about 2.5 hours trying to get working before this user group. The sample code for line of business applications that exists in GitHub doesn't currently provide any functionality to just out of the box grab this and upload an AppX file. We've got MSIs, we've got Android apps, we've got iOS apps and all that sort of fun stuff, but we do not have this. So if I find some time, I might polish this up and publish something. But functionally, we can sort of see all of this information. This is actually what I wanted in the first place. So this is all the metadata. So we've got the architecture types, the name of the application, the file name, all this fun stuff. It's a thing. This is how we get this data. I'm sure I've done this before, but if we can, what we can actually do is we can copy. So any of these commands, we can just go in here and we can hit copy, and we can copy as PowerShell. And if I pop over to my handy dandy VS Code instance, yes, I will zoom.
Thank you.
And I'll create a new window. We can actually start seeing.
PowerShell.
Yeah, because I'm not using. So this actually builds the request that the Intune portal did for us, not in the greatest language, and I've never been super happy with how this all looks, but we can format it a little bit and see what it's like. All these backticks are annoying, but whatever, that's just me being pedantic. But functionally, what this is doing is it's building the body, so the request, the form that we're filling out, it's getting our authorization token, and it's just sending that data to Azure. So if I wanted to run this, I could run this and it would create the package for me. So this sort of gives you an idea of what the expectation is for what we're actually publishing. Now, applications kind of suck as far as like learning how to use Graph, because there is actually a lot that needs to be done. Not only do we need to create the initial instance, we then need to hit a thing that creates a storage account for us. It's a very steep learning curve. Once you figured it out, you could pretty much do everything with Graph, which is the only reason I would suggest trying to learn and understand this stuff. But there are a lot of really good community tools that allow this to sort of be automated. And there's also a lot of vendor tools that make you not have to worry about any of this sort of stuff, like where I work. But yeah, so
Shameless
functionally,
plug.
yeah, it's a shameless plug, but I'm not going to say the company name. Okay, so this is line of business. We've explained why this isn't bad, why this is a bad idea to use. The two important things here are application assignment control or deployment control. We don't have delivery optimization. We do not have the ability to suppress notifications or actually schedule the deployment. It's a huge thing. That we've got it in other places and we don't in line of business is the sole reason why you should just not bother with this sort of stuff. Okay, so now moving away from that, how do we then deploy? Yeah.
And before we continue on, Peter's asked a question around real life examples why you would use this to upload. And I can answer that real easily. Say you're working on a project where you're doing a transformation from an existing device management platform where you have 100 apps packaged.
Mhm.
They all work. You know that there's no problems with them, but you need to transfer them into Intune. This is where you'd start leveraging some sort of automation to go and publish them up into Intune.
Yeah.
So it's about reducing the time to value for using Intune over your existing platform.
Yeah, for sure. It kind of comes down to, so I was actually on a call with Peter earlier today, and, you know, one of the conversations that always comes up when people are going down the journey of, even in Config Manager or Intune, if it's a new thing, business will turn around and say, oh, can we package like 400 applications? And can you maintain those? First of all, say no, and then run the other way, because it's one of the worst jobs you can ever do. But if you've got no choice, and maybe for some reason you like punishment, like me, and you actually enjoy application management and deployment, building your own tooling around like this makes it slightly easier so that you can leverage a little bit of automation, you can speed the process up, and then potentially get it into a process where you've documented the actual workflow and you can hand it off to someone else. So this is kind of what I built when I was working in my last company, when we were doing consultancy work and we were packaging heaps of applications to heaps of different companies. And we needed more than just me and Steve, really, to package these applications. So I made it into a way that we could just like make it just work. I'm not going to go into too much about how this works because I've demoed this a billion times. I just want to show you specifically why MSIX is such a really cool way to sort of get into understanding how applications are detected and installed. So again, I've done this a bunch of times. I've done it on Intune training. I've done it here. I've done it in user groups. I've done it all over. So I'm not going to go into it too much. I have a folder here with a detection script, an installation script, and the actual MSIX bundle file. The install script itself is literally this line of information. It's add Apex package pointing at the MSIX bundle. That is it. We don't need to do anything else. We don't need to detect to see whether it's there or not. We don't need to do any magical stuff. All of the other code that I've got around here is literally just logging so that I can make sure that it works if it fails. I have a log file that I can sort of dive in and sort of analyze that. But realistically, you could delete all of this and just have line 11 that just says add Apex package, and it will install and it will be beautiful. Detection, similarly, is even easier. Get Apex package. Find out what the name is, find out what the version is by installing it on your machine and pulling that information back. In fact, I have this already. Pop this up. We'll go get Apex package. Name is Microsoft Windows Terminal here. And we've got the version number here. So if I copy that, change this from preview, and we change this version number, we've now got a detection method. We're literally saying, is this on my machine? Is the version this? If it's not, detected is going to remain empty, and then we can handle the logic there. The detection method logic flow to actually tell the Intune management extension whether it's there or not is, do we exit with a 0 or do we exit with a non-zero? So everything else that's written here is nothing, but it does get dumped into registry keys so that we can do some fun stuff with it later. But functionally, we've got a 10-line bit of code that can probably be dumbed down to 2 lines if we really want to do detection method. And this is the easiest way to detect whether an application exists. I know that if we were looking at MSIs, we would need to look at 2 different registry hives, depending on whether it's a 32-bit or 64-bit. We would need to know what the GUID is. We'd need to hope that the vendor was using the GUID to actually create that folder. We'd need to hope that the version number actually followed semantic versioning principles, like some companies don't. So AppX just makes this whole process a lot easier. So leveraging MSIX and leveraging some tooling that I've created and Intune, what we can do with this information is we can actually publish this really quickly. So if I go in, I'm going to create a task here. I'm going to run a task, and I'm going to build and publish. And it's local. I'm not going to go into too much around what this is because I've already done this a bunch of times. But we're essentially creating the Intune Win media. How is hell? I can type, that might help. This is just going to ask me to authenticate, or it's not. Terminated. Why? That's great. App.yaml.
Broke.
Yeah, it did. I upset the demo gods. There we go. Just doing a device flow code. There are better ways to do this, but this is fine for now. So we'll start seeing some cool stuff popping up on the screen. So this is just creating all of those JSON payloads, yeah, that we saw when we were in the dev tools, and then we're uploading, and we're using AZ Copy to upload this file, which in theory should be a lot faster than just going through the portal as well. So that's another key reason why we would actually do this, because this is actually faster than using the UI, which that's now done. So we're just going to wait for that commit file to come through to say it's done. But in theory, we should actually be able to go in and have a look at that now. Let's have a look at this. I think it's here.
Okay.
Apps, all apps. Windows Terminal, Windows App 32. That's the one. So this has been packaged. It's awesome. We have a look. We can see our install command, our uninstall command, all that fun stuff. My detection rule didn't work because I don't have PowerShell detection wired into this solution because I don't use it anymore, so I haven't included it. But it's it's as simple as just removing this, adding one. Was it custom? Pointing at D drive. Dev detection. Yep, that's fine. Review and save. So now we've got a fully functioning installation of an MSIX application in our environment where all we needed to know was what was the name of the file and what was the version number. That's it. We don't need to do anything else. Obviously, there is quite a lot of back-end development of the solution that I used, but this is free to grab from GitHub and have a play around with. That was sort of less important. It was just more around the idea that line of business is awful. Do not use it, despite the fact that it seems like it's easier. Win32 is the future of app deployment at this present time. And I just strongly recommend that you have a play around with this sort of stuff. But now I think Steve's going to take over and he's going to show you some graph stuff that is less horrifying if you just want to dip your toes in and learn.
Yes, I will. And it's probably going to be less technical.
Oh, wait. Hey, I should probably ask, does anyone have any questions? Anyone?
Yellow. Looks like we're good.
Sweet. Okay. Steve, it's all yours.
Sweet. So what I'm going to show here is a VM that I spun up earlier today, being this bad boy here. And what we're going to talk through, I'm just going to quickly stop sharing my screen for a second. So I just need to close some stuff.
While you're
Yeah.
doing that, Steve, I'll just quickly answer Peter's sort of question. So Peter's mentioned that his biggest gripe now is the lack of way to basically do software inventory in Intune. You're not the only one. Software inventory in Intune is lackluster at this point. We just have to make our voices as loud as possible and hope that the product group will listen. I'm sure that they're aware that this is a thing that people are asking for. At the end of the day, it's just engineering investment in time, resources, and the overall cost of getting that solution in. It's very easy. So at the moment, what we're getting as far as software inventory is literally the Apex instance and what's in add remove programs, as long as it is in MSI. So it's not fully featured, but we just have to hold out hope that it's going to get better.
Exactly. All right. So here's my test tenant. I have my awesome machine here, desktop CD that I've spun up earlier today, and we're going to run some simple commands on it because why not? So obviously I'm going to step into DevTools as well, and you'll see that I already have a whole heap set up. And I'm going to clear my screen because I'm going to resend everything. So there's two things I'm going to quickly step through. Let's talk about the sync. So this is where we're going to send the sync to the computer. Why you'd want to know this and why you'd want to use this is, say, for example, you need to update configuration on a bulk group of computers. You can grab this PowerShell and then pull back all the devices that you need to hit. So let's start really simple. We're going to hit sync. We're going to hit yes. You'll see over here, we have sync device. So sync device here is literally the endpoint. I'm just going to full screen this. Is the endpoint that's at the end of my managed device. This GUID here is the device object of the computer I'm running on. And then we can step through and we'll see a whole heap more information here. So we're going to be pulling back our managed devices and we want to select the list. But it's only of that device. So what those two commands, what they're actually populating is this section down the bottom here. And you'll see when it's called it and when it's completed it. So the sync command itself is actually pretty straightforward for the most part. The question we ask then is, well, how do we get access to this GUID? And how do we do this for a whole heap of computers? So what we're going to do is I'm going to step back over here and I'm going to go to aka.ms/ge, which is Graph Explorer. Graph Explorer allows us to go and run a query to pull back a whole heap of information. Looks like the UI has been updated, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
We're going to quickly sign in here. So it's now handles being put across the screen and it's also dark theme, except for the top part. But we'll get that fixed eventually, I'm sure. So let's start really simple. We want to go and list our devices, but we don't want just all of our devices. We want to pull back our Windows devices. So I'm just going to bring up my DevTools and you'll see now I have a filter here that returns back all of my devices. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go to Graph Explorer, still signing me in. Must be something going on with my tenant. Let's see if it'll just let me run it. And you'll see it's actually going to format the box nicely now. So previously it would stop, cut the line off, and you then have to left arrow or right arrow to find what you're typing in. So this is actually a really cool feature that's just been added in. We're going to hit run query now, and not applicable to tenant.
Because you're not signed in. Just refresh the browser window.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with it's just a slight delay.
Sign in.
If this doesn't work, Steve, just copy the request and chuck it into VS Code and run it.
I don't have all that set up. Oh, actually, yes, you're
Yes,
right.
you do.
All right. It looks like it's glitching at me at the moment, so I'm just going to go over here. We're going to right-click, copy into PowerShell, and we're going to go Control-N, Control-V, F1, language, PowerShell. So it loads. It should load up my terminal down the bottom.
Yep.
Cool. As you can see, I'm doing spell check as well. Awesome.
Fancy.
And what we're going to do here is we're just going to do $computers. And we're going to go F8. So now if I go here and I hit $computers, and it didn't type the $sign, I have information. If I go $computers content, it will come back in a
Cool.
really awesome format. So we're going to go A equals convert from JSON.
You want to depth that as well.
Okay, Ben, I'll do that. Depth.
Oh no, actually it should be fine. It should it's fine. It doesn't exist. That's on convert to.
Okay. Here we go. So now if we go here, we've got our OData context, which is what Ben was talking about earlier. But in this scenario, it just contains the object that we're working on. And it didn't actually return the data. Did I hit?
No, it did. It's just not displaying it nicely.
Yeah. Oh, I know why. I think. I know why. Format. So if you see here, if I was to go all the way off my screen, I'd actually see the next section. So what we're going to do is format list and asterisk.
There we go. That's looking better.
And we can actually see the content of it. So we're going to hit a.value. Now we have our nice simple object, and we can go here and go ID. These are the IDs for all of our devices. So the next conversation we want to step through is, well, we now want to, so I'm just going to grab this and copy that. And we're going to go $IDs equal $computers dot content dot value dot ID. So it's going to bring back all of the IDs into an array. What we're then going to step across to do is we're going to go and grab our sync device process, which is this one here, nice and simple. And rather than sitting there and copying the command again, we're just going to, if I can do it, we're going to copy that URI. We're going to step over here. I'm going to sync URI equals that, right? So if we look down the bottom here, we're going to see 5D62C is in that list. So that is actually the ID of the device that we're going to do the call on. So we now have our list of computers, we have our string that we need to run. Now we need to mash them together so it goes through and runs the commands to sync what we need. So we're going to do for each ID in neat little trick. If you select the text and then put curly brace, it will actually put it all in there so you don't have to go to start and end. Here we're going to then set this to $ID. And the last step that we need to run is we're just going to be really lazy and we're just going to copy this. In the real world, what you would do is make sure your authorization token is correct and everything associated. But for what we're needing to today, we're just going to make it super simple. So we're going to grab our sync URI and replace that in there. And we're going to make sure that we have our $sign. Let's do the right thing and we're going to format it.
Thank you.
Treaty. So what this should now do is send a command off to every one of those computers to say, go and sync. And let's see if I got this right. It was very quick if it did.
Yeah. So the important thing to point out on that one, if it actually ran, do you want to scroll it? Just select run from line 16 down. So just select from line 16.
Let's make sure that's populated. Yeah.
Yeah.
And F8.
And just check what IDs is. Just type it in.
Blank.
Scroll up. What's in computers?
Yeah, search.
Computers dot content.
Okay, I got that wrong. Oh, I know why.
Let's convert from JSON. That'll do it.
Control C. What we're going to do is make Ben really unhappy with me.
No, that's fine.
And then if we go $IDs,
There
we now
go.
have our list of IDs.
So run 16 down now.
And F8. And obviously I got it wrong. But conceptually, this is how it would go through and step through it.
Just check what ID is. Yeah, it should be fine.
Oh, hang on. I could get it back. No, it's not curly brace, so it should be fine.
Content type is missing. That's going to be it. Oh no, there should be no content type. There is no content type. It should be fine.
Let's just do the right thing. Go here, copy, PowerShell. And all we're going to do is copy.
Just the headers.
Yep.
Oh, it's also not the method. The method is post. Are you doing that?
No.
No, put that in as well.
That would be it.
Yeah, post.
And let's just delete this.
Try that again.
I know it doesn't matter, but I'm just being pedantic now. And
That's better. So the important thing to point out here is a status code of 204 means success without any content coming back. So you can see the content field is actually empty. So this is just a standard HTTP. It was successful, but we didn't need to send you anything back.
The part that I always find interesting here as well, and I think it should be on computers, is if you go to headers and we go to x-ms diagnostics.
Yeah.
That actually tells you where you're getting the communication from for Graph.
That's really cool.
So you can see how far it's going if you're having latency issues and performance issues. And this is typically not going to be a major issue for most people, but it's more when you're doing diagnostics and working on large scale projects and having some issues, you can go, oh, this is where I'm hitting. Is there an issue?
Yeah.
So yeah, I figure that's a really simple way to set up code.
Yeah. So I guess a couple of questions that I've got to sort of try and spawn other people to have questions as well. What is the scenario of like kicking off a sync here? Like, how would you use that in a real world scenario? Well, like, what is the use case for this?
Say, for example, you've gone in and created, say for example, you've created a new policy and you need it on every computer right now because it opens up a firewall port or you're needing to block some policy really quickly. This is the equivalent of going into group policy and right-clicking on the top level of domain and going GP update, and it goes and does a sync to all the client computers. So do I think you should be doing this every time you're doing a new policy and every time you're changing something? No, please don't. But it's more if you need to do something in an expedient manner. And this is where you want the client computers to call home and go, hey, I need to do something right now.
For sure. And then I think as well, as far as like where you would run this code from, obviously Steve's just running this on his machine, but realistically, if you were to build something that leveraged like this block of code, but then also did other things, and you potentially wanted it to run on a schedule, like, you know, once a week, once a month or whatever, this is where you would start leveraging things like automation accounts and runbooks, or even just function apps. So that you can set it up as a schedule. It runs the PowerShell. It dumps output somewhere so that you can report on it. But like, hopefully this explains with just a little bit of like analyzing what the back end of Intune does. You can actually start building out some tooling to do things that Intune doesn't natively support for you. So, you know, in the scenario that, again, we were talking about earlier, where like software inventory kind of sucks, so make it better. If you know how to get the information out of a computer right now, there's nothing stopping you from using this sort of logic to sort of interrogate machines, to pull back data, store it in a table somewhere, and then use that, you know, to build a Power BI thing. Or I know there's another scenario that Nick was looking at today, where he wants a sort of a nice-ish way to automatically enroll devices into autopilot. This is the sort of stuff that you need. These are the building blocks so to sort of get to that point.
Exactly. And look, we've only talked about like syncing and uploading apps, but there's concepts where you can start sitting there and creating AAD applications where you can automatically go and publish into Intune your autopilot hash while you're going through a task sequence, while you're resetting the computer. And for me, I think that's fantastic, because one of the disadvantages of doing the JSON import scenario is you don't get groups, you don't get context. So this scenario gives you that flexibility to just go, yep, there you go, done, move on.
With the big caveat there that it takes about 15 minutes for the device to actually get the policy applied to it. Just going to put that out there because I know that Nick's looking at it.
And it takes about half an hour for it to for the computer to reset.
Yes. Yeah. If you're doing the full wipe, for sure. But yeah, no, that was good. You got it working. Congratulations.
Yay! I still know how to code.
Copy and paste is not coding.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. It's my job. Stack Overflow is my best friend.
Yeah, I was going to say, you just go to Stack Overflow. Now I'm just going to debug tools.
It's my homepage.
I'm sure it is. So does anybody else have any questions that they want to go through? Because we can talk through any scenario mostly. Ben will demo anything. There's the volunteer for you. Yeah.
We're also very used to quiet audiences, so, you know, if no one wants to talk, we understand it's 6:40 on a Wednesday. It is Wednesday, right?
Apparently. And if you want, we can stop recording.
Yeah, let me stop the recording in case people have got questions or there are responses that we don't want answered. So I'll just stop recording now.
I'll be honest, Peter,